all organic all the time, the sandwich would have to cost between $14 and $20. That's just what it is, okay? So what we decided to do, which is going to happen next week when we release our new website, there's going to be an organic percentage for every sandwich and every piece of food we sell. And it's going to be listed in the ingredient list what we can guarantee. And it's the minimum percentage of organicness, and it's as transparent as can be. I had this big discussion with my crew because I said we need to be proactive and we need to be transparent because there's all this bull out there where it will hurt us sooner or later because somebody will pick up and say like, okay, all these claimers who say they're organic, I'm going to buy the food now, I'm going to send it in a lab and see what comes out of it, and then you have a big issue at hand. So I wanted to raise the level and say like, okay, on my website, you go on there and you look at the Parma ham sandwich, and I can't get organic Parma ham. Try that. I mean, it's impossible. What?
Oh, yes, you can.
Parma.
Talk to Michael.
Italian Parma. Italian?
No, it's actually, I
haven't seen it.
I lived in Imola for almost 2.5 years. I worked at San Domenico in Imola, but I tried a ham. It's Quircabella. Not only is it's a guy from Parma in Iowa who's raising.
Good enough for us.
But it's from Iowa. It's the one in Iowa. I know these guys.
But they also have their.
But they can call it Italian Parma from Iowa. I mean,
They also have
nothing is wrong with Iowa.
Quircabella also has Parma ham that's Parma produced. But
You know, it's like French ham from New Jersey. I mean, it just doesn't work. So anyway, I know. We looked at that ham. It's good. It's a good product.
excellent.
Yeah. So maybe went for the oral organic sandwich. We're going to get that, but you know, it's like.
But your not to get, foodie talk, but when I saw your cookies do this.
Pardon?
The signs on the cookies already do this, doesn't it? It says 80% organic or something, am I
Yeah,
remembering right?
we went to that.
I obviously
we were
ate chocolate and
we were
cookies
screw
to see
this,
when I
it's
got
like
on.
made with organic green,
Right.
70%, this, that, and the other. It's so confusing. We just say like, this is what it is. It's 80%.
But you're doing it on
82.5.
You're doing it on your labels in your store.
Yes, and we're gonna. I mean, the transparency has to be there. The pastry now is over 95% plus organic all the time. Our bread's all organic all the time. The produce is a challenge, but now with Genesis Farms, I hope it's going to get better. But you know, you want to come in and you want your sandwich for $7.99, and then I read at Yelp that we're expensive, and they have no idea. Our food, beverage, and packaging costs are 38%. Any other business that is in my segment in quick service, their food, beverage, and packaging costs, which is lumped together, is about between 28 and 30%. All right. So that's the challenge that we have. When we make a commitment, are we all organic? No, I would be out of business. There's no point in being out of business all organic. I'd rather I'm in business a little less organic. And then hopefully by 2012, I think is an internal goal we set ourselves, we're going to be about 90% plus organic at all times. And for that, we need demand.
I think that third-party certification is something that has to be. There's some great third-party certifiers out there. Oregon Tilth is one of them. Just because I'm using them, I like to promote them. But they will certify you at different percentages, and you should. It's something you might want to look into because it's really not astronomical to use Oregon Tilth. They're a great label. And they will supply certification if you're 50, 75%, 90%. But part of it is that, to answer your question, is there's a third-party certifier that actually comes in that looks through, they will monitor what we're selling.
So recently, the Chicago Green Restaurant Co-op decided to sort of endorse both the Green Seal and the Green Restaurant Association as certifying bodies because we do feel like there's a really big problem with the transparency and the fact that so many restaurants are sort of on the green bandwagon when a lot of us know full well there's really not a whole lot of truth happening there. So what they decided to do is to create a program called Guaranteed Green, and 26 restaurants have decided to sort of participate in getting that started. And then the co-op's free to join. It helps with buying power. And the other thing that we have been initiating, we've been working on a pilot program with sustainable food purchasing with Dominic Testa to try to establish, a greater purchasing power in our local farmsteads here so that we can buy local year-round. And that's just begun with a group of 10 restaurants, and we're getting ready now that we've kind of worked through a lot of the issues and problems and trying to figure out how to make this happen, we're expanding on that. So to answer your question, I kind of feel, for me personally, that it's a pro. I just actually, before I came here today, put the outline together on how my managers are all participating in helping us to certify, because each manager has different responsibilities, and so we've kind of broken it down into pieces so that everybody gets involved in helping to complete the certification process.
70th Street Farm, it's Peter, they pick up your compost, it's, I mean,
Well, then you need
Well,
to.
He-
Yeah, I would love to.
So Michael's talking about 70th Street Farm, who's picking up compost. Well, actually, until just recently, it was illegal to transport any food waste to a place other than landfill, because food waste was, because of the way they define food waste is sort of a hazardous material. So we actually, for years, an organization called Scarce had been working on changing that. And then maybe about a year and a half ago, I kind of found out about it, and I think it's ridiculous that you can't transport food to compost. So there was a really big movement, and we eventually, got a new bill in place, and so now it is actually legal. And what we're trying to do is get some commercial composting set up within the city limits. So eventually, hopefully, there will be a pickup system for food waste, and not just commercially, but hopefully eventually residentially. So we'll be pulling a huge amount of compostable material out of our waste stream and going into landfill and turning it into good soil to be used in our parks and farms or wherever we can use it. And that's going to be a really big deal. So the Green Chicago Restaurant Co-op, Dan Rosenthal, he's trying to work on doing a composting program here in the city. I think it's going to need to be funded. It takes a lot of money to build this, but once we get it going, it'll be a really good thing. So,
And Department of Environment, I know, is also, City of Chicago Department of Environment is also working on this, but it has been a big issue. The other reason it's an issue is all those bioplastics that you get, they don't break down unless there's moisture and heat. And you need industrial composting. We do not have an industrial composting facility here in Chicago, unlike our friends in Seattle and San Francisco and other places.
yeah, so some people have been sending stuff to Indiana, and there's been some, Ken Dunn has been doing some great stuff in the city. He's been very progressive. He's been doing it for a long time. Very common sense, basic nature stuff. But yeah, it's a major process. It's a little smelly. We right now are saving all our compostables at Devon. We can't do it at Clark either because we would get shut down by the health department. But I have more space at Devon, and originally we were keeping it outside the kitchen door, but that's right where you walk up to the farm, and whoo, that was stinky. So we had to move it. And and then it's there's creatures out there that want to get into that stuff too. So one of our bins was completely destroyed by something. So composting is a challenge. It's something that hopefully eventually will happen.
It's one of those things that makes total sense and is actually pretty complicated to pull off in an urban environment. You think, well, that makes sense. It's waste equals food, and you just close the cycle. But in an urban environment with health issues. But the Chicago Restaurant Cooperative and the Department of Environment, I know, are working at it, as is Ken Dunn and these sort of other pioneers.
it's not easy to be to try. You need to try to be biodiverse. I have a friend who's raising heirloom turkeys, Williamson's Organics in Casanova, Wisconsin. My bartender just bought farmland up there, and he's raising organic heirloom breeds, and we use the turkeys at the restaurant, and sometimes it's a win-win, and sometimes the first year he said that his turkeys were so not so sustainable. They're so free range that half of them ran away. So you know. But I think the importance of biodiversity, maybe it's not getting as esoteric as going out and picking something that could be scary like foxglove or, I mean, we don't necessarily need to go to that depth, although that's interesting. We can all work to be Mark Varaz. He's a 3-star Michelin chef that scrapes mica from rocks, But I mean, I think in a basic sense, using different heirloom breeds of cattle and of chicken and of whatever else we're using, vegetable-wise, for the restaurant.
We just recently got involved in a project that I'm really excited about. It's an organization called CROP, Chicago Rarities Orchard Project. Uncommon Ground has been, for several years, funding a drink we call the Treetini, and we've been donating money from that drink, the Treetini. Yeah, and we have recently, we pledged 10,000 trees, and they're being planted in Tamil Nadu, India, near the equator. But I feel like 10,000 trees now is enough elsewhere, and I really wanted to throw that kind of power into something local. And so I found the Chicago Rarities Orchard Project, and Dave Snyder, the guy who's getting it going, I just got a great education on the fact that there, about 100 years ago, there were 15,000 varieties of apple trees. And, how many varieties do you guys know of? Just a few. I mean, what we see in the grocery store is the usual 6 or 8, and some extra ones that have been coming in from New Zealand. But there was an incredible variety of fruit trees. And so what the Chicago Rarities Orchard Project is wanting to do is to bring back some of those rare varieties. So we've started growing 60 different trees, and now we're trying to find a home for them somewhere in Chicago. And that's a bit of a challenge too, because a lot of the soil is contaminated. But the search is on. NeighborSpace is helping, and eventually there's other organizations that are helping, and hopefully eventually we'll have a full-fledged, beautiful, rare orchard project going on, and we'll be sharing, knowledge. We'll be sharing, all the fruits of our labor eventually, with restaurants and slow food, and trying to get word out about these things and create more education and more awareness about maintaining that biodiversity, which is really important, because if you get one really, there was tomato blight this year on the East Coast, and it wiped out a huge amount of the tomato crops out there. It's the same blight actually that killed the potato crops in Ireland when they had the famine. And so you can't have just 1 or 2 varieties of something, because if you get a disease, we're not gonna have a food source. So, that kind of thing, that biodiversity is really, really important to our food chain, and we really need to make sure we maintain it.
Absolutely. So, Michael, you're opening Alabama Barbecue Pit restaurant in right next year or so?
Within probably 8 months.
8 months. Okay, we'll be looking for that. Helen, you're involved with Crop. Anything else coming up?
We have our Harvest Festival on Friday, this Friday, and it's in conjunction with our Farmers Market, our Honky Tonk Friday, and then we've added World Music Festival musicians. So it's and then our
locations are at Devon.
Just at Devon in the parking lot. So open house on the roof as usual, and then Brian is roasting 4 pigs from Slagle Family Farm. So if anybody's available Friday night, come by. It should be fun.
Friday night. Lauren, what are you looking forward to in the next year or so?
Lots of skiing. No. We're opening one location next year, definitely, and if not 2. So we worked for 4 years on getting the operation and everything really buttoned up, and I think we're ready now to grow this a little bit.
Your new website in the next week or so?
That next week, new website, new catering menu. Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I want to thank you guys so much, because you are not only bringing great food to Chicago, you're bringing great values to Chicago and embodying those and being true trailblazers. So thank you for taking time tonight away from your restaurants